Welcome to this protein production technology interview with Andy Shovel. He's the founder and co-CEO of the UK plant-based food company This. So, Andy, Happy New Year. Welcome.
Happy New Year. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. And now, before we get into this as a company, could we just explore your own journey into food tech?
Yeah, sure. So it's not necessarily completely conventional in the sense that me and my co-founder Pete started a business called Chosen Bun, and essentially we sold meat for a living. It was a burger takeaway and restaurant business, and we sold meat and chicken by the ton. And then in 2016 we sold the business. We kind of decided together to get into sustainability somehow. And then in the end, we figured out that there would be a great opportunity in the plant-based category in the UK to do some disruptive NPD work or new product development work and some disruptive branding. And just we felt like we could execute in a really exciting way. And we also knew, given the product quality at the time that was available on the market, we knew we had to lean in really hard to the product development and the tech side of things. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Okay. I mean, and what inspired you to actually create this? Just out of interest, how did you come up with the name?
Yeah. So first, well, taking the second question first, I was brainstorming for quite a long time, and of the two of us, me and Pete, I'm the sort of more brandy one, so it's more my responsibility. And I, in the end, I must give credit to my ex-girlfriend because she said about 15 words through, during an hour-long brainstorm. She was doing a little passage of 15 words, and when I heard this, which was one of the words, I was like, yes, that. And she's like, "What? Which one?" I was like, "This." And my kind of ex-girlfriend was really helpful in helping me. Um, if we'd have got married and then divorced, I'd been worried about some sort of claim, but we're not together anymore.
Yeah, yeah, don't do
um,
that.
so that's how the name came about, and I wanted a name that was short, punchy, different, and something that emphasized the products, if that was possible. That was part of my kind of brief to myself when I was trying to brainstorm names. So I think this is, for me, a good name, and I like that it confuses people sometimes. I think it's fun. What are we going to have for dinner? Let's have this for dinner. Like, what? If people don't know it, it can be quite confusing, which I quite enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well, we're
and
going to
then,
come on to that marketing strategy in a minute. So it's good that you're the brains behind all of that.
sure, yeah. And then going back to your other question of what inspired me, the answer to that question has changed a lot over time. But back then, what inspired me was that, like, quite unromantic reasons, really. I thought it would be a great category to get into, was ripe for disruption. I was excited, and Pete was excited by what was going on in the States at the time with Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods. And I know that some, got mixed reputation now, but back then, it was very, very exciting for that work, in that plant-based world. And we also, to be fair, wanted to get into sustainability, but neither of us were vegans at the time, back in 2017. And then shortly afterwards, I did become plant-based, first vegetarian, then fully plant-based a few years ago.
Mhm,
And fast forward to now, I'm like completely mission-driven, having not really
mhm.
been that mission-driven before. I'm a very passionate animal lover, and I believe very strongly in improving animal rights. And so I've had quite a journey personally in terms of how mission-driven I am now versus what I was before.
Mhm. Well, you've answered my next question already there. So I was going to ask you how you classify yourself when it comes to your dietary status and the reasons behind that, but you've just
Yeah.
answered them perfectly. So obviously we'll focus more today on the future, but for a second, let's look back on 2023 and some of the key milestones of what was a tremendously successful year for you guys as a company. What were some of those highlights? I mean, you seem to buck the trend of what was seemingly going on elsewhere in the industry with lots of growth.
Yeah, we did. The category at large declined about 5% last year,
Mhm,
and we are 45% up in terms of our sales. So we've definitely bucked the trend. We're the highest performing plant-based brand in the UK in terms of growth in that year, 23. Yeah, highlights, I guess, were quite a few successful launches. So one of them I was absolutely terrified about was our new roast product, which is kind of a almost a double chicken breast with stuffing in it, and
mhm.
then some garlic kind of plant-based butter on top. And I think it's fair to say the management team at this, we were all quite terrified because the price point's close to £6, and we were like, oh my god. No one's going to buy it. It's so expensive, and the product quality is great, but we still were just terrified. And then it launched, and it's just flown. It's had, during the Christmas weeks at least as well, it had a rate of sale of about 20 across the retailers. And just to put that in context, that puts it as one of the highest performing products in the entire category, and it's £6. So that product's been really, really successful. Another highlight for us is how we've seen sausages grow in popularity. So our plant-based sausages, they've only been in the market for probably about a year and a half, 2 years. And they're now a very clear number 2 after Richmond sausages, chasing them down actually. And I do believe they've got a good chance of being number 1. So watching that has been very satisfying, not just because of the obvious reasons that it's great to have a successful product, but another reason is that for quite a while when we launched, we were sort of the bacon guys, and we were very keen internally to become much more than that, and to become a kind of full service plant-based brand for people across different product types. So watching these different products become popular has been very, very rewarding, because that was always our objective, to be more than just the kind of plant-based bacon guys that we were at the beginning.
Not many interviews I can actually say this, but I have tried your products, and particularly the sausages, the pork and onion, or not pork and onion, as I should say. Very good. Even my son-in-law, my son liked it. So I was so surprised, because they are, some of these products, not yours, are hit and miss, but we'll probably talk about that a bit later. And one of the things that stood out for me, and probably why I bought that packaging, that particular product, was the way it looked on the shelf. Now, this has a very distinctive brand. It's very striking, and your marketing and advertising campaigns are often witty and tongue-in-cheek. You seem to take yourself not too seriously, but I guess that's not the case. So what's the thinking behind that? And how much of a role do you think your marketing, your brand has played in your success?
So I think the approach is very deliberate, and it might seem sometimes a bit sort of silly and chaotic, but it's all a very deliberate attempt to, I guess, recognize that people have often negative preconceptions about plant-based meat alternatives and about veganism in general. So I think what we try and do with our branding and marketing is disarm people's defenses and preconceptions by having a laugh and entertaining them and shocking them and surprising them. And so we want to drive people to consideration and then eventually trial of our products through basically just being an entertaining brand. Sometimes I try and think of us as a sort of media company that happens to sell food. Like, I think we have such a challenge. We've always had such a challenge on our hands that a lot of sort of day-to-day meat eaters are very skeptical, not only of the products in the plant-based category, but of the whole movement. You know, it's kind of, oh no, that's not for me. Like, I'm not the sort of bloke or lady that wants to, be associated with veganism. It's not me. So we've had to work really hard, basically, to be relatable and to tell people through our comms and our branding, well, actually, it could be for you, it could be for anyone. And I think we've tried to be a sort of refreshing, different sort of voice in the category. And so, yeah. And then your other part of the question was, how much we can credit our success to that sort of side of things with the branding and the comms. I would say probably the reasons when people ask, like, why have we managed to make good headway in the category? I'd say probably 50% brand, 50% product. There's not a whole lot else to it that people see if you're oversimplifying. Obviously, we have every function in the business, is doing an amazing job to make it happen, whether it's finance or ops. But when it comes to probably why the consumer decides to buy and then to buy again and again, it's probably product and brand.
Well, it's one thing to get a customer to buy your product once, but to get them to come back and back and back, that's the crux, isn't it? So what strategies have you found most effective in reaching, engaging with those consumers in the plant-based sector? And not just the plant-based sector, but trying to attract, people like me, a flexitarian, I guess.
Yeah, so a few different things, I guess. On the marketing side, in the early days especially, although we still do them, we were sort of we were very active making stunt videos. So our thing would be to sort of I don't know, we had a state funeral for bacon when we launched our bacon product, our plant-based streaky bacon. We like took over, a little bit of London with a procession of, there was a coffin and a hearse and a marching band. We've put forged Van Gogh painting with our mints hidden in it in the Van Gogh Gallery in Amsterdam. We replaced the picture of bacon with our plant-based bacon on Wikipedia for a few months. Like we've done like loads of these stunts, and we tend to record them and then put them online. Sometimes they get in the press. And I think it's been a great strategy for us to become sort of notorious almost. Like when it's kind of end of March, we get loads of comments and messages on social media being like, "Can't wait to see what you're going to do this April Fools." And that really always makes me happy when I see that people kind of, hold us up as a beacon of silliness in FMCG. And I think it's what's helped us get a really high brand love score, so otherwise known as NPS score. It's something like 90%. So 90% of people who have tried the brand would recommend it to other people, basically. And I think it's testament to products, but also like the way the brand engages with people. So yeah, I think it's been a successful approach, and we've tried to translate that into, the sort of like, let's say, the more grown-up formats and channels that we've now been using. So outdoor advertising, TV, on our outdoor campaign, we had like silly puns and stuff, and our TV ad we made kind of silly as well, with a very well-known food critic, Grace Dent, and we sort of trick her in the TV ad. I'm actually the sound guy. And which I was very pleased with myself for being an extra and sort of saying I'll do that. And then I saw in the news recently that Donald Trump did the same thing when he insisted on being an extra in Home Alone. If they used his hotel, he was like, so it just made me think, God, am I like Donald Trump? So I insisted on being an extra in our TV ad.
Nothing like Donald Trump. Nothing like Donald Trump. Now I saw it. Was it you guys recently that you did that stunt in Downing Street? Was it while COP was going on? Was that?
No, that you know what? That wasn't us. It was actually a genuine photograph taken of Just Stop Oil protesters, sort of, clashing with police. And there happened to be one of our buses in the background, one of our advertisements on buses. It was absolutely insane. Like, such a good photo.
It's a 1 in a million chance, isn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't anything to do with us. We just contacted the photographer and asked if we could use it.
Yeah. How do you navigate the marketing challenges associated with positioning your products to appeal to both meat eaters and those already following a plant-based diet?
Yeah, well, it can be unbelievably difficult because in the eyes of some like more hardline vegans, sometimes we're not vegan enough, and it upsets people. And sometimes we've had negative feedback from some of the vegan community. A couple of like individual sort of flashpoints in the past, in particular, have been sort of worrying at the time. And then, of course, on the flip side, we've got to be careful not to be too vegan for the mainstream, because if you're too vegan and you configure all of your sort of comms, your tone of voice for vegan people, then you will not appeal to the mainstream, which is obviously a big downside. So in answer to your question, it's a real tightrope and it's very, very challenging. And sometimes we get it wrong, because if you're really pushing the envelope with something, then you will always just end up getting it a bit wrong at some point. So yeah, it's really difficult, to be honest. And I think like I felt maybe I've been misplaced in my confidence, but I felt quite well qualified to try and walk the tightrope, because I am a very, very passionate animal lover and plant-based, I have a plant-based diet. But on the other hand, I probably am like a slightly more user-friendly than some of the other very passionate vegans I've come across. Having had a meat business and being in business just generally, like, I don't know, I feel like I get it, and I feel like I get what the mainstream relates to.
Yeah, I get that. Now, how do you leverage consumer feedback and market trends also to inform your marketing strategies and product development initiatives?
Historically, we've not done a huge amount of consumer testing. We've just kind of like backed ourselves when it comes to new products. We're now starting to do more, especially for some of the more important launches. Perhaps we'll go into that later in terms of like future stuff. But yeah, historically, we haven't done a huge amount of consumer testing. We've got a team of 60 people, so we tend to test a lot with them and do surveys with them, and that's helpful. In terms of what was the other part of your question after the?
It was leveraging consumer feedback and market trends to inform your strategies and product development as well.
So yeah, market trends, like we buy a huge amount of data. So we buy sort of market data to tell us what the best performing products are and which brands are doing well and who the consumers are who are buying each product and when and how. So like we do leverage what's going on in the market quite a lot. Whether or not it constitutes like looking at trends, I don't really know. I think it can be quite dangerous looking at trends in plant-based because it's a very, very fast moving, like fast evolving market. And I think what we've tried to do is be ahead of the curve almost when it comes to trends. Like when we launched our streaky plant-based bacon, it was really unlike anything really that had kind of come before it. And we've done that a couple of times in the past. Like when we launched our original bacon back in 2019, when we launched the business, like that was also quite different to anything that was on the market. And so I think we're quite keen to not really be led by trends, but kind of almost try and blaze a trail ourselves. It's almost like I'm quite a big believer in the Henry Ford quote, which I will definitely get wrong, which is something like, if I'd have asked the people what they want, they would have told me a faster horse. And I think the point of the quote is like, consumers don't always know what the next trend is that they will be excited by. And it takes an innovator or an innovative company to create that.
We're going to talk about innovation and new product development now. We've talked about how you differentiate yourself from other brands in the market with your marketing and branding, etc. But so how do you do that in terms of taste, texture and variety?
So I guess the short answer is we have a very talented, quite large innovation function in the business. So we've got a team of about 20 who purely are food scientists. There are no, our entire innovation team are scientists basically. And we also have our own pilot scale and large scale high moisture extrusion machines, which I think is quite unusual for brands. It's quite a big investment to have those pieces of kit. But it means we can iterate a lot and we can experiment a lot and kind of push the boundaries when it comes to extrusion technology. And we've got a few people on the innovation team who are, I suppose, almost a subsection of that team who focus purely on science. So what that means is they're always looking at kind of tomorrow's innovation rather than what's going on today. They'll look 1, 2, 3 years ahead. And so that's now starting to, because I suppose we introduced that sort of section of the team maybe 2 years ago. So we're now starting to see the benefits of that. So when it comes to fat systems, for instance, I'd say we're at the very leading edge globally of what's possible in plant-based. We've got some very clever fat systems in our products. So why are they clever? Take our sausages, for example. Our sausages are actually quite low in fat. They're low in saturated fat. 85% lower than pork in terms of saturated fat, and yet they taste as succulent, I would say. There's really good kind of juiciness and tastes like you're having a fatty product when really you're not. And we leverage kind of like trapped water in our fat system and all sorts of clever things, basically. And so, sometimes you get companies, especially historically in the plant-based space, who I personally think do science for the sake of getting VC investment. I won't name names, but I really think that's been quite a common thing. Whereas I think we try very hard to do science for consumers and for that taste and texture, which sounds obvious, but genuinely, I do think quite a lot of companies in the past have done sort of vanity projects to try and raise millions of pounds.
Yeah, certainly that definitely goes on. I mean, you've got quite a large range. I mean, what ingredients are you using in these products? Is it different for different products?
Yeah, it is different, but there are some ingredients that are quite commonly used in our range. So we use a lot of protein from peas. We use soy protein as well. We use olive oil for fats, for various fat systems and different products. So those are probably the most commonly used ingredients. And then there's a sort of mixture of other ingredients, but we try and be, the cleanest label products in our kind of subcategory. So we normally succeed, I think, not always, but we're definitely on the cleaner label side of things when it comes to plant-based at the moment.
Mm-hmm. It's difficult probably for you to answer this one because you have such a wide array of products, but are there any specific challenges or breakthroughs in R&D that you encountered while striving to replicate those characteristics of meat in plant-based alternatives?
Yeah, there's a product that's just launched recently. When I say recently, I mean 3 days ago, in the restaurant sector. So it's our wings.
Okay.
They've basically got like skin on them, and they have a texture of essentially a sort of confit chicken wing. So really, really fall aparty, kind of like succulent, tender meat. And I have to say, it's like an absolute beacon of kind of excellence, I would say, in terms of R&D.
Mm-hmm.
The way that sort of system was discovered for making that product was actually, I think, it's called a, what do we call it? A play day. So I think the innovation director's idea was basically, must have been about 2 years ago. The innovation team just had this play day where they didn't focus on their usual work at all, and they just basically went in a room and just had a play, and they could do whatever they want. And one of the scientists, who's sadly left the business now, actually, she was just playing around and came up with this way of putting the sort of plant-based meat together, which led to this, essentially this product. There'll be more products using the same technology actually coming out this year. And I just can't stress enough how insane this is. Like, it's all encapsulated within this skin. And what that means is you get the realistic skin, which crisps up and stuff, but then you also get like this succulence because it's all trapped in the skin.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have a product which I would say is more succulent than chicken. And it's got this dark meat texture. It's just completely bonkers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a really exciting product. And I've been so G'd up about that launching. I'm actually going to go and try it in Brewdog, which is the first restaurant partner to have launched it. And otherwise challenges, yeah, like we've had such a nightmare with one of our products, which is just so high potential. So our streaky bacon, it's doing well, and it's, I think it'll be the best selling plant-based bacon hopefully for a long time. However, we've had some teething problems with it because what we've done is we created this kind of plant-based muscle bonded to fat to create like a streaky bacon.
Yeah.
It's quite a first, I would say, for the category. And we found that when we launched it in January last year, like we were struggling to keep it bonded together. So when you took it out of the pack, it was coming apart.
Yeah.
And it was just a shame because the product's so great when it works. We've now pretty much fixed it, which is brilliant. But I think we've got a bit of a job on our hands to get people to try it again.
Right.
Because I think we had some problems. So that's an example of us, really pushing the boundaries of what's possible, and having some difficulties along the way, I guess.
That's another one of your products that I've tried. I've had it in a plant-based burger. We're a burger family, traditionally. So we decided to have a plant-based evening. So the bun was plant-based, the burger was plant-based, the mayonnaise was plant-based, and we used your bacon as well. So I was impressed with the way it cooked. Impressed with the way it cooked, and it tasted great as well. So it's a difficult one to replicate, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, it is. Yeah.
So can you shed any light on how you're approaching partnerships and collaborations within the food industry to expand your reach or develop new products? I mean, presumably you're collaborating with chefs and experts to sort of enhance your culinary range.
I've not got that much for you on that front, actually. We don't really collaborate much with chefs, certainly not kind of well-known chefs. We're hoping to do a bit more on the collaboration front this year and next year. So we'd love to collaborate with kind of big, well-known brands of, say, sauce, or maybe like big restaurant chains that are also in retail. That's an objective this year. But historically, we haven't done that much. We've done a lot just internally. And so, yeah, I'm trying to think of collaborations we've done these bacon-flavored hippie crisps with hippies.
Okay.
So that was pretty fun. We've also collaborated with what are they called? Hip Chocolate, which is a vegan chocolate brand, and we made a bacon flavored Easter egg. And what else have we done? Nothing that I can think of. I mean, obviously we have partnerships with loads of restaurant chains. So I'm not sure if that falls into your kind of collaboration bucket or not. But we've got tons of incredible partnerships with restaurant chains like Greg's or Cafe Nero, or Brewdog, as I mentioned, Patty and Barn, like loads of different chains. Ask Italian. So yeah, we do collaborate in that sense because they put us on their menus and their marketing materials. So yeah, there's lots going on in the restaurant space.
How much of your business is actually in food service versus retail?
Yes, it's about 25%. Yeah, just 25 to 30% depending on the month.
I guess it's an important avenue for reaching
Mm.
those consumers, isn't it? Now we're
Yeah.
going to talk about the UK market specifically and consolidation in the market. So in 2023 in the UK, we saw a few notable brands unfortunately go into administration, some of which were rescued, others not so lucky. What do you think is happening in the market at the moment?
I think what's happening is very unexotic and conventional, which is that you have, and it happens a lot in different categories. So you have a sort of over proliferation stage where there's kind of hype and everyone goes, oh God, I better get a piece of that. And then they come into the market, leading to way too many brands and products in the market. Same happened with craft beer a few years ago. Same happened with popcorn. Same happened with coconut water. Same happened with smoothies in the mid noughties. Like it just always happens. And people in plant based, the press rather, have been much more sort of emotional and excitable when it comes to the same journey in plant based, because I think there's sort of politics behind it, and sometimes you get
Almost an anti-veganism, would you say?
yeah, I think there's a very strong anti-vegan sentiment in the press.
Mhm,
Maybe it's because of the demographics on the whole of the people who are writing the articles. Don't
mhm.
know. But yeah, that there is definitely, especially the right-wing press. I mean, the Telegraph is just foaming at the mouth, right? Every week there's a new like hit piece on plant-based in the Telegraph, and it
Yeah.
must be due to the politics and the demographics of the people writing there. But basically, yeah, what's going on in our market is very conventional. It's now correcting and consolidating, which has happened in all those other categories I mentioned. And it's consolidating around a few brands, of which we are one of them. And it's actually a good thing because consumers will be left with like higher quality, fewer products. It'll be less confusing to shop. And I think that we're probably halfway through the consolidation phase. There's been quite a lot of consolidating, but we've still got more to go.
Mhm.
Um, and the overall market size, has contracted slightly, and it will continue to do so. And then I think it will normalize and start to grow again, steady growth,
Yeah.
even in spite of all the headlights.
Yeah. Well, it's not a cause for overall concern for the sector then.
No, I wouldn't say so. I think it's actually a good thing. It's a cause for It's a cause for concern if you are a brand in the sector who is not delivering excellence in terms of product or brand,
Mhm.
as we've seen, as you mentioned, some brands going into administration, having to exit the category. But that's kind of just free market economics. Like you could argue that it's sort of slightly tough love, isn't it? Like if the products aren't good enough and they're not satisfying consumers, or they're not satisfying a need that is necessary, then it's not surprising.
Yeah, and that is the truth. Some of the products aren't good enough, and I interviewed someone a few weeks ago. It was for an article about hybrid foods or blended products in the same issue that you're going to be featured. And he mentioned two of the leading brands in the USA. I won't name them, but you can probably guess who they are. And he just said, they're not very good. They're not very good. So in your experience, what have been some of the primary hurdles for the plant-based industry in gaining widespread acceptance and market penetration? You've achieved this, so
Mm. The biggest difficulty with the plant-based category faces is the unfair subsidies, and therefore unfair price differential between meat and plant-based. So to elaborate just a bit further, the meat industry survives on subsidies, and not just subsidies that everybody knows about, which is the ones from central government and from the EU, but there are also subsidies from supermarkets, because supermarkets take less margin on meat products than they do on plant-based, sometimes half or even more than that in terms of a difference. So what that means is if supermarkets are taking I don't know, X percent, call it 30, 40% margin on our products. And let's say that the supermarkets decide that, well, they have decided that meat is an everyday product and it can be a loss leader for them. So they'll take 10% margin on it.
Mhm.
That difference in margin represents an enormous difference in price to the end consumer. So you've got the subsidies from government, you've got the subsidies from the EU, you've got subsidies being thrown at the meat industry to prop it up. And then you've also got subsidies from the supermarkets themselves, which means that there is a very, very discordant pricing dynamic between plant-based products and meat. And that's the biggest challenge for sure. Because if you took away the subsidies from government and from supermarkets, then meat products like chicken breast or minced beef, whatever, they would end up costing £8, £9, £10 each pack, instead of £2.50. The business doesn't work on its own, because turns out rearing animals takes more energy and other resources and money and feed than our insatiable appetite for low prices can allow. So that's probably the biggest challenge, I would say, is that price difference, because we have to work so much harder to get price parity with meat. And how that feeds into your question about mainstream adoption is clearly that the mainstream are price conscious, as they should be in this country, and so therefore it's a big hurdle. And then other things, I guess, product quality clearly as a category we've generally struggled. I think also we've been facing quite new headwinds when it comes to health and nutrition and perception of health and nutrition in our products. So we have to work as a category in the next few years to sort of win back all of the trust from people when it comes to health and nutrition. So I think that's quite a key one for the next few years.
Staying on that topic of retail, what sort of strategies are you implementing to overcome the challenges of distribution and shelf placement in traditional retail spaces, considering the dominance of conventional meat products?
So are you talking about how retailers basically put plant-based products in the plant-based bay, which is away from the meat category? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I guess so. And also how much presence it has in that particular sector. I mean, my local Sainsbury's, I've noticed that plant-based sector getting quite significantly smaller, I think, in the last 3 to 6 months. I don't know if I'm imagining that, but it's good for you guys because your product's stayed there and it looks like it's taking up more space. But
yeah, that's good. Well, I think on the whole, retailers have not shrunk the bays much. Sainsbury's is an exception. I believe Sainsbury's has actually shrunk bays in plant-based a fair bit. But other retailers like Tesco, I don't think they have. Asda, Morrison's, I don't think they really have. So on the whole, they stay the same. I think for now, for the foreseeable, we're likely to keep seeing the plant-based bay being separated from the meat bay. Tesco, as it happens, have been experimenting for some time with a sort of second, smaller satellite plant-based bay within the meat area. So I think they're sort of dipping their toe in terms of trying to amalgamate the two areas. But I think obviously the long-term vision and ambition for our category is to have just a protein aisle where you can get your meat or your plant-based protein or whatever it is you want.
Yeah. How are you addressing the misconceptions and skepticism about plant-based products, especially regarding taste, nutrition, or sustainability? And how have these perceptions evolved over time, do you think?
I think that we respond obviously differently to whichever kind of headwind it is that you mentioned a few. To take the health and nutrition one, I guess, because it's probably the most relevant one today. We are working hard on a new range of products, which we plan to launch this year at the end of the year. And they are going to be very health and nutrition, clean label focused. So they'll be very different to what's currently out there on the plant-based market, especially in our portfolio. There'll be nothing like what we make. And they're going to be like a very clear answer to people's concerns when it comes to health and nutrition of plant-based meat alternatives. So we've got a very kind of, thought through definitive response to those kind of health and nutrition perception concerns from people. And when it comes to product quality, I guess we've just really always worked hard to attack that on all different fronts, whether it's like amazing food photography on the pack that tries to get the kind of crave factor going with people, or it's the videos we make where we kind of trick food critics, or we shock people who don't know they're having plant-based food and we trick them into thinking they're having meat. We've just always worked really, really hard to drive home to people that actually this is a new kind of plant-based alternative which will shock you with its quality and its likeness to meat. That's kind of always been our thing, as well as trying to be funny and entertaining. Like that's our, our main thing is basically our signature move is to try and trick our audience into thinking they're having meat when they're actually having plant-based food.
Have you encountered any challenges from the meat lobby? I know this is a big thing in the US. A lot of these media campaigns seem to be financed by the meat sector in one way or another. I mean, does that go on in the UK? Have you encountered any resistance or challenges from that traditional meat sector?
I think they fight slightly less dirty over here than in the US. I mean, the US is sort of when it comes to lobbying, it's kind of fairly filthy, I think, in terms of how much power, how much hidden power as well the lobbyists kind of have in the US. It's not quite the same, to my knowledge, in the UK, but I have started seeing pro meat adverts don't know if they're sort of lobbying. I think it might be from DEFRA, and I don't know who funds it actually, but I've seen Richard Ayoade. Is that his name? Richard Ayoade, and who's used to be one of my favorite comedians, and now I don't really like him because he's the voice of the meat industry on my TV. But yeah, so I think they're getting their act together and trying to promote meat as a healthy protein source, and kind of obviously whitewashing the enormous pollution and suffering which goes on in the industry. But yeah, it's always kind of expected, I guess.
It's just completely unsustainable, isn't it? I mean, the way we produce it, the water, the land usage, the feed to feed the cattle to feed us. It's just ludicrous, and it's only going to get worse over time as the population increases. That demand for protein goes up, and it's just going to go pop at some point, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's very unsustainable. But what I am more preoccupied with is how industrialized, mechanized factory farming, which is how most of us get our meat, that is morally inexcusable. And for a nation of supposed sort of animal lovers who all have dogs and cats, it's quite surprising how we manage to switch off that part of our consciousness when it comes to what happens to these animals in our factory farms. So yeah, I think ethically, the way we farm most of our meat is pretty inexcusable ethically.
Yeah, it's a little bit off topic, but I caught the new Chicken Run film over Christmas, and it's obviously a cartoon, but quite powerful, and its message and the way that chicken is produced. So, now we mentioned expanding horizons earlier with products. Now, what about regions? Are you planning on expanding your global reach?
Yeah, we are. We're very, very kind of tentative, Nigel, about that. We've kind of gone into the Netherlands last year in September. That's so far going well, but we've got to make sure it sticks and it is a sustainable channel for us. So we'll be focusing on that for H1. Maybe in H2 we'll look at another territory, but we are in no rush. The UK and the Netherlands are two of the biggest plant-based markets in the world. There's no reason. If you look at the sort of body count on the floor of the plant-based brands over the last couple of years who have fallen away, a lot of the problems for them have stemmed from overreaching. In particular, Meatless Farm, they were in many territories doing not that much revenue in each of them. And in my opinion, it's a recipe for challenges and if you do that. So we are going to be really, really careful when it comes to expanding internationally and just try and do it really thoughtfully.
Yeah. Don't run before you can walk. Now, funding is a vital component for any business in this sector. I mean, how have you approached investment? I mean, where did you get all the money to do what you've achieved?
So Yeah, from different sources. So we've gone to individual angels at the beginning. Pete and I actually sort of, I guess, self-funded the business for the first year or so, and then we went to angels. We went to VC funds. We've gone to crowdfunding a couple of times, and then we've also gone. We've had one or two corporates invest, or in fact, just one corporate, I think, invest in our rounds. So various kind of sources of funding, I would say. Um, but it's now a case where we're aiming to get profitable by the end of this year. So we're going to get off the kind of funding merry-go-round finally, I think, if we can achieve our ambitions there.
Yeah. I mean, what advice would you have for other startups looking to get up and running in the sector? And if you could go back in time, would you do anything differently?
Yeah. So first question, I would advise startups getting into the sector now to be very, very conscious of their unit economics and make sure that they are getting out of the gates from day one with a really like healthy gross margin. Times have changed, and you can't just kind of hemorrhage money and focus on growth. Just like get your VCs to pick up the bill. Times have changed now. And then in terms of doing things differently, I probably wouldn't do that much differently when it comes to how we built the business. Maybe one thing I would change is like we it took a very long time to hire a senior team. We only just really got around to it like last year, sort of thing. Maybe the end of 22. So I think that's led to some problems because if you scale a business without a senior team and everyone's quite junior, the ways of working can be quite chaotic and you just perhaps unstrategic. So I think if I could turn back time, I would change that to make sure we had a senior team in place earlier. And I see a lot of other founders doing the same thing as well. And it's really a bad error. So yeah, I would definitely change that.
I guess you have to bring in expertise from all areas of the business, sort of supply chain, distribution, health and safety, regulations, etc.
Yeah, it's pretty much across the board. It's just really important to get senior people in earlier, I'd say.
I'm wondering if you pay close attention to other pillars of this so-called alternative protein sector, such as cultivated meat or fermentation-enabled proteins. Is there anything elsewhere that particularly excites you?
I think precision fermentation is an interesting area. It hasn't yet really found its feet, and it hasn't done anything game-changing for us just yet. But we're keeping an eye on it. I think cell-cultivated meat is interesting and could become relevant in sort of 10 years or whatever. I think it will be a much longer time period before they become commercially and industrially relevant than perhaps most people expect. They're quite famous as a sort of industry for slightly over-promising and under-delivering. And I don't want to sort of really criticize, I guess, but I'm just saying as a business, we are not focused on that area for the near term. There are kind of quite a few unanswered questions when it comes to how the scaling up is going to happen. Yeah, cell based not so much, but yeah, fermentation is definitely interesting.
In this same issue, we've got an article on so-called hybrid foods or blended products. I mean, do you envisage any collaborations between plant-based companies such as yourself and cultivated, or even companies producing precision fermentation-based products?
That's interesting. Yeah. So the only way that cell cultivated products could become commercially relevant is through some sort of blend, whether it's like 5% cultivated and 95% other. Again, I'm not sure the merits of doing that really. You'd have to have kind of 50-50, and they're nowhere near. They're many, many years away from being able to do that in terms of commercial scale. So yeah, I'm not sure about that. Yeah, I guess blended with fermented products could be really interesting. I'm not sure right now how and necessarily why. But we're very open to it. So yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not very sure about the sort of blended products with meat and plant-based, which I've seen a couple of. I think they're a bit of a random kind of non-starter for me.
And finally, Andy, what are your future goals or visions for this in terms of expansion, product development, and well, you've talked about the market reach. Just going to walk before you can run.
Yeah. So in general terms, I think I would love this to be an absolute global leader in this next wave of alternatives to meat, which I think will be whole food based. So they'll be based on seeds, lentils, that kind of thing, but rather than made in a traditional way, made in a much cleverer, more exciting current way. So I want us to be kind of leaders in that new wave of alternatives. I think that would be a very exciting outcome for us, as well as obviously driving and becoming leaders in our current area of meat alternatives. And I think we can be an enormous vehicle for change because of the way we're so mainstream in our positioning and branding, and our product quality and approach to new product development is I would say like class leading. So I think all in all, I'm very excited and bullish about how much change we can create as a brand going forward, and just like getting more and more people in. I mean, once we have that arm of our business for that kind of clean label, health focused products, we'll have an answer for everything. We'll have an answer for the people who just really want that taste of meat exactly. And then we'll have an answer for people who actually are just way more focused on going meat free because of health and nutrition. So I could see us becoming a kind of full service offering for anyone who wants to reduce their meat intake. And meat consumption is at its lowest level since kind of modern records began in the UK, and that represents a really exciting opportunity for us, I think, to capitalize on.
Well, that's certainly been my motivation for starting to make the switch. I haven't made it fully yet, but I'm getting there. Andy, look, thank you very much for your time. It's been absolutely fascinating speaking with you. Wish you all the luck in the world with everything you do this year, and we'll be paying attention to it very, very closely indeed. So thank you very much.
Cheers, Nick. Have a good day. We're really good to chat to you.
Cheers.